Hey, I'm Michael Giacchino. I wrote the music for Jojo Rabbit, and I'm here talking with Kaya and Film.Music.Media All Access about Jojo Rabbit, just like I said. So that's what we're going to do here, so let's do it.
Mikey, thank you so much for your time. It's so great to sit down with you. So yeah, let's just dive right into Jojo Rabbit because I think it's such a unique project. Talk about how you met Taika and how did you get involved with this? Because you haven't worked with him before. Is it just you guys were both in the Marvel universe and you kind of met that way?
Well, yeah, I think we met very, very briefly at one of the Marvel events or something, but I didn't know him at all. And I was a huge fan of his, of course, because I love his movies. And especially Hunt for the Wilder People, to me, it's just one of my, I just love that movie so much, and Sam Neill can do no wrong. But, so it was literally just came from a phone call. I got a call saying, hey, Taika would like to give you a call about something. Would you be interested in talking to him? I'm like, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll talk to him. So he called me up and we started talking about the movie, and he asked if I would read the script, which I never do. I don't really enjoy reading scripts generally because
you react more, right?
Yeah. Well, what happens is I just envision my own version of this movie, and then I inevitably start doing work, which gets undone when I finally see the movie and go, oh wait, this is not what I was thinking. This is somebody else's version of that script. So, but for him, I absolutely was like, yeah, I'll read it. And so he sent it to me, and I loved it. And I was just like, yeah, I'm doing this movie. I will do this movie, absolutely. Because just knowing his sensibility, knowing his unique take on everything he does, I usually for a first time sort of relationship when I'm working with somebody, they have to be so solid and so there has to be something there.
Because you usually just kind of work with your friends,
I usually am just working with my friends over and over, people that I know and love working with, and I get their sensibilities, and we have a lot of fun working together, So to bring someone new into the fold is always a little, you're rolling the dice. But I didn't feel like I was rolling any dice with Taika. I thought, if anything, he was rolling dice on me, whether or not I could give him what he wanted. So I was like, okay, I'll go down that road. We'll see what happens.
So what did he want? What were those kind of first conversations about? Because it's such a unique story and a unique film with a unique kind of tone. So.
Yeah, he wanted it to be emotional. It wasn't something that I think he knew there's comedy, there's satire involved in this film, but it can't live on that alone, and the underlying truth has to be emotional. And he said to me one time, he goes, okay, you know what I want? You know how you made everyone feeling up? Just do that for my movie. Just do that for my movie.
So cry uncontrollably.
Yes, exactly. And the thing is, all the elements were there for him to do that, which in his story, it's all there.
Yeah.
A lot of times you get a movie that aspires to be that, and it's not. His was there. It was.
I loved it. I mean, definitely has your sound. Actually, there's parts that remind me of Lost a little bit. There's kind of Lost sensibilities, but it was a great. It kind of put you in a newer kind of area too. I kind of enjoyed it very much, knowing all your work coming for it. But I want to rewind back, kind of go back to your kind of origin story, because you originally fell in love with filmmaking, right? It wasn't. Was music the original goal, or was that?
No, music was never the goal for me. Yeah. I grew up starting 9 years old. I made my first 8mm movie.
That's right. Yeah.
And I, never stopped making them. I went to film school. I did all of that. For all those years, I made tons and tons and tons of films. And that, stop motion movies with my friends. So it's it's not Lawrence of Arabia, but it was something that I loved doing so much. And then music I sort of fell into when I was producing video games, and they needed.
That's right.
They needed something for one of the games I was working on, and I wrote a piece of music for it.
And was music a hobby? Did you?
Music was a hobby at that point, because after I graduated from film school, I said, I want to study more music. So I went to Juilliard for a little under a year and studied composition and things there. And then when I moved out to LA, I continued doing that at UCLA. But it's more about cherry picking things I was interested in. I wanted to learn about orchestration. I wanted to learn about, because I loved writing music, and I was doing it, on the side at night. I would do it.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of kind of spiraled out of control, and
it was like Lost World, Medal of Honor, and just kind of took off.
All of these things, and I have to give Steven Spielberg a huge amount of credit because he was the one that gave me my shot on The Lost World. You know, I had friends working on that game at the time, and I was actually not even working on that game. I was working on another game at the studio, which had nothing to do with it, but he heard my music and he liked it, and I met with him and he was like, we have to do this with a real orchestra and this and that. I'm like, okay, you know, and then he gave me another shot on Medal of Honor, and he's been super supportive throughout all of this. And so for me, it all like goes back to that crazy moment of him saying, you know, we have to use a real orchestra for this.
Right.
If that didn't happen, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today.
Yeah, I mean,
so
and at the time, that wasn't a thing for games,
no.
like big orchestral scores.
No.
Yeah.
And it's in this town, it's hard to find people who just want to like help somebody.
Yeah.
We're just like, oh, that person's good, push them along, you know? Especially someone like him who can so easily do that. And I really admire him for that, and it's just been a huge, you know, so a huge thank you out to him.
For sure. I remember you're one of your first credits was you're like an associate producer on the Lion King game.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're just you're kind of behind the scenes, just working on these games.
Yep, I was producing animation and I even had an animation company at one point.
Really? Wow.
You know, which I love. I love animation. I love that's why I love filmmaking, because you're involved in all of the arts. You know, it involves everything, which is great.
Music, lighting, cinematography. It's just like everything is put together. I remember you mentioned I was at some screening and you were talking about, you had a job at Disney? Were you working like in Disney publicity?
I worked in publicity, before video games.
So that was your first kind of
My first job out of college was working in publicity at Universal Pictures.
At Universal, okay.
Yeah, and then I was there, and then I got hired across the street by Disney.
Yeah.
And this was in New York City still at the time, in their publicity department, started working there. And then they moved me out to LA. So I was in publicity, I don't know, 5 years, something like that. Wow. And then before making the jump to video games and then into all the craziness that came after. But it was invaluable. That time period was great. Even though at the time I wanted desperately to get out and do something else, looking back, I learned so much doing all of that. I learned so much about the business of filmmaking that I never would have had I just stuck to studying music or studying, you know, filmmaking or whatever. Right. You know, it's all of the other stuff around it that no one teaches you.
Yeah, you don't learn in school.
No.
But talk about that, because it has to be essential to know the business side of this industry in order to, I guess, survive.
Well, I think it certainly helps you, and it can't hurt you. And I feel like, you know, when music students come up to me and they're like, "What do I need to do to get to do what you're doing?" And I was like, "Stop studying music. You should already know that at this point. Why are you going to grad school for music? If you want to be a film composer, go study movies.
Yeah.
Study film history, study literature, study editing, go take a lighting class, go direct your own movie. Just understand what that process is on all fronts.
Yeah.
Because the more you can talk to the different people about what they do, the more comfortable they'll feel with you.
Yeah.
And you'll be a better storyteller. You have to learn storytelling. You know, you can't just learn how to orchestrate really well. It's useless to you in this business. You know, if you're ignoring studying storytelling. So to me, I always tell them that's what you got to do.
Absolutely. But in terms of also just the kind of nitty-gritty business side of things, contracts, unions, all these things, I mean, it's a big loud noise when you're here. Does that ever kind of interfere in the creative side of things? Do you ever just feel like you want to just kind of turn that off and just kind of be able to focus? Are you able to do that?
Yeah, no, I don't bother with that too much.
Yeah.
I don't listen to it. I understand it also. If the questions come about, I know exactly how to answer them about it. And on the business side, I'm very well versed in all of that, so I don't have a problem with that at all. Yeah. To me, there's something enjoyable about that side as well. You know, the whole producing thing. I did spend a fair amount of my time producing video games and animation and everything. So that's all part of that job. So I do enjoy that. I think it's it's a fun part. Again, it's like all the elements that are involved in what we do are interesting to me.
It's so amazing, so I mean, we talked about video games. You kind of use that as a launching point, then you move to TV and then films. And within that time, games have become this resurgence. I mean, the top grossing entertainment entities, ever.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Call of Duty just came out, broke every record. Would you ever go back? Would you ever think you'd go back to video games and maybe do something?
It would take a very special person and or product to do. You know what I mean?
To entice you back.
Because it's not so much about enticing. It's more about just time. I am so busy on these other things that I'm committed to. It's just hard to find time to do it.
Games can because stretch across like years sometimes. You know?
I mean, some of the best times I've had in music have been working on video games. I loved working on Medal of Honor and all of those things.
Yeah.
Like those were great. The first Call of Duty series, it was just, that was a great time, and I was able to write big orchestral music, and I had a lot of fun doing it. But sort of my business has changed into more, went from there to television and then into movies, and that sort of like has swallowed me up at this point. So,
yeah, for sure.
So
I mean, your TV stuff is great too.
I'm not counting it out. Who knows? At some point.
Black is an underrated game. That's one of my.
Yeah.
You did it with Chris. Yeah,
I did that with Chris, and Chris is great.
Yeah, I love Chris's music, and he's a big gamer too. I love it.
Well, see, I don't play games. I'm terrible at them. I don't play them. Chris plays them, and he loves them. Yes.
And in terms of TV as well, I know you just talked about you're kind of absorbed in movies, but since you did Lost I would credit as like the game changer that kind of changed network TV.
Yeah.
Now we have this kind of, they call them the golden age of TV right now. Would you ever go back to do maybe like a mini series or?
Again, I mean, who knows? I mean, a lot of the people I work with go in and out of both worlds, and I feel like those lines are blurring more and more every day. So it really would depend again on what it is and who would I be doing it with.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go out and seek just for the sake of doing a television
just
show.
I want to do one. Yeah.
But if someone I know really well or respect came to me and said, I would certainly entertain anything that's good storytelling.
So let's talk about your kind of just general approach. Where does the first note come from? I know you talked about you don't like to read scripts. You like to kind of wait and see something. Do you try to just wait for that first cut? Do you want a more final cut?
No, a first cut is fine. A rough cut because it'll give me the emotional, direction they want to go. But the first note comes from how did I feel about that movie? How did I feel about it? And I'm never, ever writing music where I go, oh, that's the sad part, so I have to write sad music.
Right.
It's always about writing the music that I'm feeling, So the movie has to work on some level.
Yeah.
And if it's not working, then I can't really do that movie. It's hard to work on that kind of a thing.
It's hard to fake it.
I can't fake it.
Yeah.
And I know I would be miserable. I would hate working on it. It's very difficult. I don't want to do that.
Right.
So I only choose things that that triggers something in me, and that even for the big movies, even for Spider-Man, there has to be something about it.
An emotional hook,
that makes me, so that's what I'm always looking for. So that always, the music always starts there. How did I feel about the movie? And I can write something. If I felt something, I can write something.
And do you ever tap into, I guess, just in your personal life? I mean, we all have our stories. We all are sponges. We absorbing. Do you ever if you're reacting, kind of, you're making yourself cry? Do you have to go back to maybe a tough time in your life, or do you have to find something joyful to kind of get that joy? Is it ever kind of autobiographical, I guess, in a sense?
Well, usually if you're reacting to something in that way, it's because something else that you can relate to in your own life happened.
Right.
So if something has happened to a character on screen, it might remind you of something that happened in your own life, and you definitely tap into those real emotions because all of those life experiences you have, that's your well of creativity, right? That's where you get everything from. So you can reach back, but you have to be, I feel like, a truly empathetic person. You have to be able to understand and feel for someone else and something else. I would imagine that it would be really difficult for someone who has no empathy to write something that is supposed to feel like it has empathy. I don't know how that would work.
Like AI scoring.
Yes, exactly.
Like
Yes, the AI can understand that structurally this is how movies work, and this is what normally happens. But in terms of making that emotional connection from one human to another human, that has to be real.
But do you also, there's also like a psychology behind music too, and do you understand like when you're doing something like, I know this will get a certain effect from a human being, or do you have like the kind of like tools that you'd be like, okay, I know how to get that?
No, it's really about, is it making me feel that way? Always have to go with that. How is it making me is it putting me in the emotional space that I think that I need to be in for this particular moment? Right. So it has to be that.
Because there's one thing you do that I notice, you always, not always, but sometimes you'll close a cue and you kind of have to sustain those strings. And that technique, I don't know, I can't explain what it does to me. It's just like, it's like the movie is rolling or the scene is rolling, and then it's just like, freeze that emotion, like push it to the front of your head, and you're just like, it kind of holds you there. Yeah. It's just like you grip the audience. How did you?
I think it's more about, because it makes me, when I do that, it feels right to me. You know what I mean? I'm not really ever thinking about beyond, making the audience feel something. It's more about, what can I do to make me feel more about what this is? This is,
I just love that technique.
It's always, sadly, it's always about, making me, I'm just trying to get across to you how I'm feeling, and that's what it is.
So when you're working with, you mentioned, you talk about you're working with your friends, JJ Redbird and Matt Reeves, of course. I guess when it comes to a disagreement, what happens? Like, are you guys just, do voices get raised, or is yelling happening, and then you just like, guys.
Not yelling yes, there is arguments, of course, yes. And we go back and forth, but it's about us trying to make sure that the other person is on solid ground with what they're thinking about, and challenging each other. I mean, JJ and I challenge each other all the time, and it's the best thing in the world, because it feels like he points things out to me that I never would have thought about.
Right.
And it helps make what I'm doing better. And the door is open for me to do the same with him. It's same with Brad and Matt. That sort of trust in collaboration is really, it's so important. We all want the same thing. We want the movie to be the best it can be. We want, we are all on the same side. We're there to help each other. I also understand, look, in the end, it's their movie. And I would never force them to do anything, that in the end, even if I don't agree with it. But once we've had that conversation, hopefully I'm at a new understanding as to why it is they want it a certain way, or why they want to do that. But I have to say, like, most of the time we are really on the same page about everything. And it really is it's a joyful experience. But that creative, fight is an important thing to have.
It is.
You have to do it.
You got to check people.
If you just sit there and listen and just do what you're told, nothing new will ever come out of it, or no surprises. And those surprises are the things that make things special.
For sure.
And you just never know how or when it's going to happen.
And now you're you're kind of stepping in the director's chair a little bit. You did a short with Patton Oswalt, and then I think there's some Star Trek stuff were you working on? Do you foresee yourself maybe doing a feature one day, like a big feature?
Yeah, I'd love to. I definitely would love to do that. It would be a lot of, it's about more just kind of picking up where I left off years ago and just sort of saying, you know what, I want to do that again. And it's not that I would abandon music. I certainly wouldn't.
Would you score your own film?
Yeah, I definitely would. Yeah. I scored the one with Patton.
Yeah, you did.
It's fun, and and I'm scoring the Star Trek short that I'm doing, which is really a blast. I love that. It's been so much fun to do that, and it's just made me realize how much I miss making things like that. And working with all these different artists, as opposed to just me sitting in a room writing on a piano and being like, all right. I really do. I love working with crews. I love working with that. So the hope is, do more of that.
So you've worked on a ton of sequels. Is there, I guess, a recipe for a sequel? Do you have like a thing, like what to do, what not to do? Do you kind of embrace that original theme, especially if it's not your theme? And how do you, like whether it's Mission Impossible or Jurassic Park?
Well, certainly. There are certain things. I think you need new, though. If you don't infuse a sequel with a certain amount of newness, to me, it's not interesting.
Right.
Spider-Man, as for fun, we opened the film logos with using the old Spider-Man thing. And that was just because Kevin Feige and I are complete dorks.
Yeah, just nerds.
We love it. And we were just like, let's make it as big as possible. And it was just purely out of that. But Spidey has his own theme, which then evolves into the next movie. And it's important for me. I loved it when you would see movies, especially in the 80s and all of that. There are so many great film scores. But if there was a sequel, it held on to whatever was that main theme that it leaned on, but it expanded. Like if you listen to the soundtrack for Star Wars, and then you listen to Empire Strikes Back, you have the Star Wars main theme still holding strong there. But yet you have all this new stuff too.
Right.
Like to me, if it doesn't do that, then it's not interesting. I like it when things evolve and you keep getting new ideas and themes, and you're just building out this world, this musical world. To me, that's I love that.
And when you're taking over, so I know you're just starting work on the Batman, but is it hard to ignore what came before? I mean, what Hans did, what Danny did, what the original.
Yeah.
Do you have to try to block that out and just try to focus on whatever Matt is creating?
No, because those are. It's like graphic novels or comic books. If you read comic books or graphic novels, they each have their own take on these characters, right? And some of them are darker, some of them are funnier, some of them are more, right in between. It's all over the map. That's how I look at these. These are all different interpretations of it, and I love what Danny did. on Batman. I love what Hans did. But that's their version of it, you know. And I'm sure my version will be very different from their versions, you know. Much to the disappointment of a lot of people in the world, it's going to be different because it's so funny on Twitter. Everyone's like, "You have to use the theme from this Batman or that Batman." I'm like, we're doing our own Batman.
Yeah.
Leave us alone. You know, we're doing our own version of a thing.
For
You
sure.
know, but people, man, they get really.
It's crazy.
And Batman means a lot to people. I thought Star Wars meant a lot to people.
Yeah.
Batman's been like, ever since like this been announced and everything, it's been really interesting just looking at everyone's responses going, so you just kind of have to wipe all that aside and just do what you think is right for the movie. It's not about pulling something up from the dead unless it has a real specific reason for being there.
Absolutely.
So.
Is there a certain genre that you kind of gravitate towards? I know you kind of mix. I think you've done everything at this point. Even with Planet of the Apes, you even kind of got to do a little spaghetti western a little bit.
Yeah, it was
which
really fun.
I love that score, by the
Yeah,
way.
no, I love those movies. I love.
Yeah. Is there a genre that you haven't tapped or something that you're just like, oh, that would be interesting to do? You've done horror.
I've done horror, yes.
Comedy, romance.
I enjoy horror. I would like to do more of that.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
You know, I would like to do more of that. It's hard to find a good horror movie, though. You know, there's a ton of horror movies, but it's hard to find those good ones.
Yeah, Let Me In was a good one.
Yeah. And that's because it comes from a really personal place.
It's a very emotional film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it has to be in order to really work.
Yeah.
Horror movies nowadays, a lot of them are just jump scares and, you know, loud noises and all that. And I guess it can be fun, but it's not as interesting to me as something that is much more psychological and goes deep into a character.
Right. So for folks who don't know, talk about your track titles and the inspiration. How did that start? What was the origin of your kind of punny track titles?
This started back on Alias. You know, Steve Davis, who's my music editor, still work together today. He, you know, it was his job to put together spotting notes for each episode, and he would have to put titles for these things, you know, and he started titling them these crazy things, and I was like, that's pretty funny. And then I was like, yeah, but I can do a better one than that. We started like kind of having this contest back and forth, whoever could come up with the best title, and that sort of spilled over as my sort of career grew and started working on different movies, and I have like 2 or 3 music editors that I work with on a normal basis, and we all just started doing it together, and it was just more out of, I don't know, just to keep ourselves busy so we don't, you know, go stir crazy doing what we're doing. It was just more about having fun and doing it, and all those cue titles went out. We never thought of it because we thought it was just for us, you know. But then when albums started coming out and all of this, and then I remember Star Trek, it sort of hit a head when Star Trek came out because people got very upset about the track titles on the Star Trek album. And there's one guy I remember, you know, yelling on some film score forum thing. Right. Does he not take his job seriously? How dare he name these things this way? This is going down in history. Like, he went on this huge rant. And I was like, wow, okay. So you'd rather me just name it like, you know, Space Chase, or, you know, or Kirk jumps over chasm. You know, I'm like, I'm sorry, not going to do that, you know.
Where did World's Worst come from?
Again, Stephen Davis. It was World's Worst Beach Party, I think. No, there was World's Worst, something in Alias. I forget what the very first one was.
Beach Party was Lost, I think, yeah.
Yeah, Lost was the beach party, but after we did it in Alias, World's Worst, there must have been a few of them in Alias, I'm sure. But it just became a thing. Almost every movie that we do now has a World's Worst. Yes.
Yeah. One of my favorite ones is Kiss and Vinegar from Ratatouille.
Yeah, that's right. I kind of love, there's also another one I love. Yeah, that was Stephen Davis. Paul Applegreen did one, which I thought, The Apes of Wrath.
Apes of Wrath.
Yeah, that's great.
The Apes ones had great ones.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the hot seat a little bit. So Marvel kind of come into this debate now with Scorsese and everything. What's your take on this Marvel, not cinema? Do you get the point that all these auteur filmmakers are making? And as someone who's in the Marvel universe,
I understand it. I feel like they feel like they're being crowded out of the bigger picture of film exhibition, and that's a legitimate beef. You know, I get that. You know, I don't. You know, of course it's cinema. It's all cinema. It's all cinema. And it's, you know, and look, there are great mafia movies and there's terrible mafia movies. So look, let's be honest about all of this. We're all trying to do the best we can.
Yeah.
You know, on all sides. But I do think there's something to be said about leaving some room for more, for the smaller films and the smaller filmmakers, and pushing them more as something to see. We tend to only push the bigger things, and I think it is important to push the other things as well. The Jojo Rabbits, you know,
the Jojo Rabbits,
you know, I think Lady Bird, all of these things are just like, those are, because I love that movie, and
Lady Bird's very great.
If I wasn't like living in this town doing what I'm doing, I probably never would have heard of that movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I was out somewhere in middle America, I wouldn't have heard about it. So I do think it is important to make room for them and to give them props, help them out, and let them stand alongside all of these other movies that are being made.
Absolutely.
You know, especially when they deserve it. You know, that's like, you know, we have to kind of help with that.
So to wrap things up, as a fellow human who has a hard to pronounce name, what's the worst butchering of your last name that you've ever heard?
Oh God, it goes. I mean, you know, no offense to the people who announced my names at the awards.
At the awards, I gotta say.
You know, in 2009. But
Giacchino.
that was kind of like, you know, guys, just do a little homework and you know. So
pronunciation.com.
Yeah, exactly. Or just, you know, write it phonetically somewhere. I don't know. But I've lived with that through my whole life. It's always been like that. So
I've been Kea for most of my life. So,
So. It's just not surprising to me. I'm just like, whatever. That's why on my Twitter I show how to pronounce it.
Yeah,
actually no, Giacchino.
Giacchino.
Yeah, Giacchino. Giacchino is acceptable, but it's not.
That's Ja.
Yeah.
Well, Monsieur Little Jacket.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thanks
for your
for
time
having me.
today. It was such great to chat with you, and hope we can do this again maybe some other time. It would be great.
Sounds great.
Awesome.